Every man believes he can trespass upon your boundaries without consequence, until the day he learns that power does not forgive. Today, we expose the cold art of retaliation, how to strike precisely when the line has been crossed, and why mercy is the luxury of the weak. In the silent theater of human dealings, lines are drawn not in sand, but in blood, pride, and power. To tolerate their breach is to invite ruin, to react without strategy is to expose weakness. The wise ruler does not roar in anger. He calculates. He studies the trespass, judges its nature, and responds with the precision of a dagger to the heart. In this reflection, I, Niccolo Machiavelli, shall teach you how to turn violation into an opportunity, where the offender learns fear and others learn respect. There is a law of power few dare to admit. Every unpunished violation invites a greater one. You know this instinctively. You have felt it when someone disrespected you once, and then again with greater boldness. But did you ask yourself why? It is because human nature is predatory, not always with teeth, but often with ambition, pride, and opportunism. A man does not test your boundaries to see how far he can go. He tests to see if you will stop him at all. History is filled with rulers who learned this too late. Consider the fate of King Henry VI of England. Gentle, indecisive, and endlessly forgiving. Each concession, each failure to respond, invited betrayal after betrayal. The nobles who once bowed to him eventually conspired to overthrow him. Why? Because he taught them he was safe to defy. You may believe yourself above such brutal lessons. After all, you are not a king. But think of your own life. When someone crosses you, takes what is yours, insults you, mocks your resolve, what happens if you let it pass? Do they feel shame? Do they feel gratitude for your mercy? No, they feel permission. Psychologists call this the reinforcement of transgression. When behavior goes unchecked, it becomes normalized. When normalized, it escalates. What begins as a small slight becomes a pattern. What becomes a pattern becomes an expectation, and once it becomes expectation, you are no longer respected, you are tolerated. Ask yourself, what is more dangerous? A man who openly opposes you, or a man who believes he can chip away at your authority piece by piece with no resistance until you have none left? This is why tolerance carries a price. The erosion of your image, your control, your influence. It is like rust on steel. Invisible at first, fatal when ignored. Consider ancient Rome. When Julius Caesar was warned about the growing power of his rivals, he understood the cost of inaction. He struck decisively, crossing the Rubicon and seizing control rather than allowing hesitation to signal weakness. Was it ruthless? Yes. But history remembers the bold, not the timid. You may protest, but what if I don't want to appear harsh? What if I risk losing relationships? And here lies the uncomfortable truth. Power is not maintained by pleasing others. It is maintained by creating boundaries so sharp that others fear to test them. Mercy has value only when paired with the capacity for punishment. Otherwise, it is mistaken for impotence. Reflect on your own encounters. A colleague who interrupts you in meetings. A friend who constantly borrows but never repays. A partner who disregards your standards. Did your silence stop them? Or did it embolden them? Understand this: to allow one violation without consequence is to silently declare that you accept more, and they will come. They always do. Even in nature, predators sense weakness before they strike. Wolves target the limping deer. Crows peck at the dying beast. And humans, more cunning than either, test your limits with words, actions, and subtle encroachments. Your task is to show, early and unmistakably, the cost of such trespass is not worth the gain. But beware, retaliation must be deliberate, never impulsive. A ruler who lashes out in anger is a fool. A strategist who responds with precision commands fear, and fear, unlike love, does not fade when tested. So ask yourself now, what have you tolerated recently? Where have you allowed a small disrespect to grow into quiet contempt? Who is learning that you will not act, no matter the provocation? Think carefully, because in the next segment, we will ask an even sharper question. How do you measure the true weight of an offense and decide whether correction, warning, or destruction is required? The line has been crossed. The choice is yours. Not all violations are equal. Some deserve correction. Others demand eradication. But how do you know which is which? This is where rulers, both of states and of themselves, often fail. They strike too hard at a small slight, appearing insecure, or they hesitate at a grave betrayal, appearing weak. Both mistakes carry the same cost, loss of power. So let us dissect an offense as a surgeon dissects a wound. Not to gawk at it, but to decide whether to treat it or cut it out entirely. First, ask yourself, what was the intent? Was it born of ignorance, carelessness, or calculated defiance? A careless word, a thoughtless gesture. These are not threats to your authority. They are accidents of human nature. A calculated defiance, however, is something else entirely. It is not the action that matters. It is the intention to test how far you will allow yourself to be moved. Consider the court of the Byzantine Empire. Emperors learned to read insults carefully. A servant who spilled wine on royal robes was punished lightly. Accident. A noble who delayed a salute to the emperor was exiled. Deliberate slight. The first could be forgiven. The second threatened the very perception of imperial strength. You must learn to make the same distinction. Ask not, what did they do? But rather, why did they dare do it? Second, measure the severity of the violation. Was it a small tear in the fabric of respect, or a slash to its very core? A subordinate who speaks out of turn may need only a subtle reminder of rank. But one who questions your authority publicly, who undermines your position in front of others, this cannot be left to chance. Here, response must be decisive, leaving no ambiguity about the hierarchy between you. Psychologists speak of status dynamics, the constant, silent negotiation of who holds control in a relationship or group. Every action is a signal, every word a test, and every failure to respond is a surrender of standing. Understand this power is not taken in one bold stroke. It is eroded in whispers, glances, and half measures. Third, weigh the timing and context. Did this offense occur at a moment of your strength or your vulnerability? When Caesar faced a Senate questioning his authority, he understood the timing was no accident. His enemies tested him when the Republic was restless, when soldiers whispered of rebellion, when allies hesitated. To let it pass would have invited revolt. Instead, he took decisive action, silencing his critics, marching on Rome, and proving that hesitation had no place in his court. Likewise, in your life, violations often come when you appear distracted, hesitant, or indulgent. They are attempts to see whether fatigue or kindness has dulled your edge. If you allow one such breach to slip by, more will follow. Fourth, determine the audience of the offense. Was this done in private, where it affects only you, or in public, where others watch closely? An insult in solitude may be met with calm correction, but a public slight demands a public answer. For what is power, if not the perception of control in the eyes of those who might challenge it next? Reflect deeply on these four measures: intent, severity, timing, and audience. Together they form the anatomy of an offense. Ignore them, and you risk overreaction or paralysis, each deadly in its own way. But even when judgment is made, the question remains: how do you respond in a way that instills respect, without appearing rash, cruel, or unhinged? That is the next step, because once you know the weight of the offense, you must decide the form of the reply, and that choice will define whether others fear crossing you again, or prepare to do it bolder next time. In the next segment, we explore fear, not as punishment, but as deterrent, a sharper weapon than anger, a quieter force than revenge, yet far deadlier than both. Power is not maintained by punishment. It is maintained by the anticipation of it. Fear is the invisible chain that holds men in line long before the lash is ever seen. It is the shadow of consequence, not its reality, that governs behavior. Why is this so? Because punishment is reactive. It happens after the damage is done. But fear lives in the mind, whispering, "What might happen if I dare?" And that whisper is often louder than any blow you could deliver. Consider the reign of Cesare Borgia, the Duke of Valentinois. He did not need to execute every man who defied him. Instead, he made a few decisive examples. Punishment so swift, so precise, so calculated, that others imagined 1,000 horrors that might await them should they follow the same path. The lesson was simple: punish rarely, but when you do, make it unforgettable. This is the essence of fear as deterrent, not cruelty, but calculated unpredictability. People must believe you are capable of decisive action, yet not reckless enough to lash out at every slight. Too much fear breeds rebellion. Too little breeds contempt. The balance is everything. Psychologists describe this as anticipatory anxiety, the state where the mind imagines possible consequences and restrains itself, even without external enforcement. This is why a ruler, or anyone seeking authority, must learn to create an atmosphere where consequences are both believable and vague. Why vague? Because a man who knows the exact cost of defiance may calculate whether it is worth paying, but a man who fears the unknown price imagines it as greater than it truly is. Ask yourself, how often do people fear you? Not because you are cruel, not because you are harsh, but because they sense you will not hesitate to act if provoked. Do they hesitate to insult you, to test you, to encroach upon your domain? If not, your image has grown soft, and softness in power invites only sharper knives. Reflect on a modern example, a workplace. Two leaders manage teams. One scolds loudly at every mistake, constantly handing out warnings. The other rarely raises their voice. But when lines are crossed, the consequences are swift, quiet, and irreversible. Which leader do employees tread more carefully around? Not the one who yells, because anger becomes background noise, but the one who punishes sparingly, with surgical precision, because unpredictability breeds fear, and fear breeds obedience. Even in personal life, this principle holds. If a friend exploits your generosity and you respond with emotional outbursts, they learn that your power lies in noise, not resolve. But if your response is controlled, cold, and final, withdrawn support, a severed tie, a silent boundary, they will remember, and others watching will remember too. Fear, however, must never turn to terror. A ruler who inspires terror destroys loyalty. Men will obey him, but only while plotting his downfall. History offers endless warnings. Caligula ruled Rome through terror until his guards, suffocated by dread, ended his reign with daggers. Contrast this with Augustus, who inspired fear tempered by respect. A ruler unpredictable in punishment, but measured in reward. His authority endured for decades. You see, fear is not about pain. It is about preservation. It keeps others from gambling with your power. It forces hesitation where boldness might otherwise take root. And it allows you to govern not by the whip, but by the shadow of the whip. So I ask you, where in your life do you rely on punishment when you should cultivate fear? Where do you strike wildly instead of creating a presence that warns, silently, cross me, and you may regret it in ways you cannot foresee? Because the next step is not merely inspiring fear, it is learning how to make your response an example for others to witness. Without ever showing the full weight what you can do, that is where real power begins. Power is not maintained in silence. It thrives in spectacle. When someone crosses the line, your response is not merely for them, it is for everyone watching. Because make no mistake, there is always an audience. Colleagues, rivals, allies, even friends. They observe not only what you tolerate, but how you answer those who dare challenge you. Why does this matter? Because people do not obey rules, they obey perceptions. And perception is shaped by what is seen, not what is whispered in private. History offers endless proof. Consider the rise of Cesare Borgia, whose brutal execution of the cruel governor Ramiro di Orco became a masterpiece of political theater. The governor had served him well, ruling harshly to restore order to Romagna. But once order was secured, Cesare publicly executed him, displaying the body in the town square for all to see. The message: I reward loyalty, but I will not share blame for cruelty. The people feared him, yet praised him. His rivals trembled, and all from one public act. Now ask yourself, when someone wrongs you, do others see how you handle it? Do they see you as a figure of quiet strength, or as one who swallows disrespect in shadows? Because if they do not witness your resolve, They will assume it does not exist. Psychologists speak of social signaling, the way human beings communicate authority and dominance through actions that others can observe and interpret. A private reprimand may satisfy your anger, but it does nothing to shape the narrative around you. A calculated public response, however, sends a message that echoes beyond the moment. But be careful. Spectacle must be measured. To humiliate someone too severely may make you appear vindictive. To respond too softly may make you appear weak. The key is subtlety, making your example sharp enough to cut, but elegant enough to command respect. Consider a workplace scenario. An employee undermines your decision in a meeting. Do you lash out? No, rage cheapens authority. Instead, you calmly expose the flaw in their logic before the group, decisively closing the discussion. No shouting, no theatrics. Just quiet dominance. The room understands who holds control, not because you claimed it, but because you displayed it. Even in personal life, the principle stands. When a friend disrespects your boundaries, you do not beg for better treatment. You withdraw access to your time, your energy, your presence, publicly enough that others notice the shift. This is not pettiness, it is demonstration. And demonstration creates deterrence. Yet the greatest masters of this art know something deeper. A public example is not about punishing one offender. It is about educating everyone else. Those who witness learn the cost of crossing you. They learn it without needing to experience it, and so your authority grows, not through repeated confrontation, but through a single, memorable lesson. But here is where subtlety becomes strategy. You must never reveal the full scope of your power. Why? Because once your limits are known, bold men will try to test them. Instead, your response should suggest that your strength is deeper than what was shown, that the punishment they saw was but a fraction of what could have been. Uncertainty breeds caution, and caution preserves control. So ask yourself, what moments in your life demanded a public response? Where did you act in silence when a single decisive gesture could have solidified your standing? And most importantly, how can you make your next display of strength one that lingers in memory long after the offense is forgotten? Because the stage is set. The audience is watching, and your next move will determine whether they see you as a ruler or as prey. In the next segment, we explore why coldness, not rage, is the true mark of strength, and how emotional detachment turns a single act of response into a legend of control. Power is not loud, it is quiet. It does not burn with rage, it chills with composure. Those who lose themselves in anger reveal more than they realize. They reveal fear, they reveal insecurity, and worst of all, they reveal their limits. Ask yourself, what is anger but the confession that you have been provoked beyond control? The man who rages is not feared, he is studied, because in his fury his enemies see his weaknesses. They see what wounds him. They see what moves him. And once they see, they can strike again, deeper and with more precision. History is filled with rulers undone by rage. Consider the downfall of Xerxes, king of Persia. When a storm destroyed his bridge of boats, he ordered the sea to be whipped. Yes, whipped, 300 times. His anger made him a fool, mocked by his own soldiers. It was not the storm that defeated him. It was the image of a king who had lost command of himself. Contrast this with the great strategist Scipio Africanus, who defeated Hannibal of Carthage. When betrayed by his own officers, he did not rage, nor did he show the slightest hint of personal injury. He simply gathered evidence, presented it with icy precision, and stripped the traitors of their command in front of the Roman Senate. No shouting, no outbursts. Just the cold, surgical removal of disloyalty. The message, I do not bleed, I do not break, I do not forget. Psychologists call this emotional regulation, the ability to govern not just others, but oneself. Because he who cannot master his own temper cannot master his enemies. Now reflect on your own life. When someone provokes you, do they see your anger? Do they watch your voice rise, your gestures sharpen, your face betray the storm within? If so, they are learning you. They are learning where to press harder next time. But if your response is calm, calm to the point of unnerving, They learn something else entirely. They learn you are dangerous precisely because you do not reveal when or how you will strike. Coldness suggests patience. Patience suggests calculation, and calculation inspires fear far more enduring than rage ever could. Consider a workplace example. A rival ridicules you in front of others, hoping to provoke a reaction. If you lash out, you confirm their baiting worked. But if you meet it with quiet indifference, perhaps a faint smile, perhaps silence, you deny them their victory. Later, when the time is right, you deliver your response, not in words, but in actions that alter the balance of power in your favor. This is not just discipline, this is strategy. Even in personal relationships, coldness is a weapon. An emotional outburst teaches others they can provoke you. But a measured withdrawal, a calm, decisive boundary, teaches them that consequences come without warning and without apology. The difference is profound. Rage shouts, coldness echoes. But beware, coldness is not detachment from reality. It is not the absence of feeling. It is the discipline to channel feeling into leverage. A cold man does not lack fire. He hides it beneath a layer of steel, releasing it only when it serves his purpose, not when his pride demands it. This is why the greatest leaders, from Augustus to Catherine the Great, cultivated an image of controlled severity. Their enemies could not read them. Their allies could not predict them. And their subjects feared to ever see what lay beneath the mask of composure. So I ask you, what image do you project? Do others see you as a storm, wild and loud? Or do they see you as a still blade, sharp and waiting? Because in the next segment, we go further. We explore how to turn every breach, every insult, every challenge into a calculated advantage, not through anger, not through coldness alone, but through the mastery of turning disrespect into dominance. The lesson sharpens, the game deepens. Every offense holds two dangers and one hidden gift. The dangers are obvious: loss of face, loss of authority. But the gift, the chance to transform disrespect into a weapon sharper than the insult itself. This is the art of turning breach into advantage, not by dwelling on the injury, but by exploiting the moment. Why merely punish when you can profit? Consider the Roman Senate's conspiracy against Julius Caesar. They believed that killing him would restore the Republic. But the act only magnified his power, turning him from a man into a legend, a martyr whose death justified the rise of an even stronger ruler, Augustus. The breach became the seed of empire. The conspirators acted, but Caesar had already ensured that their act, whatever its outcome, would serve his legacy. This is the mindset you must adopt. Do not see an offense merely as a threat. See it as a stage, one where you can perform a display of control so sharp, so calculated, that the offender becomes the instrument of their own humiliation. Psychologists call this cognitive reframing, the ability to reinterpret events in ways that turn setbacks into opportunities. But in power dynamics, reframing is more than mental, it is strategic. You must ask yourself, how can this insult make me appear stronger, not weaker? Perhaps someone spreads lies about you. Instead of rushing to defend yourself, you wait. You gather proof, not merely to expose the liar, but to reveal their deceit at a moment that damages them most. The betrayal becomes your tool, not only to destroy their credibility, but to elevate yours. They handed you the knife, you decide when to use it. Or imagine a rival openly challenges you before others. Most would respond with sharp words, rising to the bait. But a wiser player smiles, concedes nothing, and later uses the incident as justification to take decisive action, removing the rival, securing loyalty, reshaping the hierarchy in their favor. The challenge was meant to weaken you. Instead, it gave you the excuse to tighten your grip. History is rich with such plays. When Catherine the Great faced a palace coup, she did not crumble. She seized the rebellion as proof of her resolve, riding out in full regalia, proclaiming her right to rule, and rallying the army to her side. What began as a threat to her throne became the foundation of her legend. You must learn to do the same, not by reacting emotionally, but by seeing every breach as raw material for a greater design. Ask yourself, what can this teach others about me? What narrative can I build around this moment? Sometimes the advantage is subtle, winning respect by handling an offense with dignity and control. Sometimes it is bold, using the violation to justify a display of strength that silences future challengers. But in both cases, the key lies in refusing to see yourself as a victim. The moment you do, the power is theirs. Instead, treat each insult as a chess move. Not a threat, but a gift, an opening to strike, reposition, or ascend. The board has shifted. The question is, do you see only the loss of a piece, or the path to checkmate? So consider now, what offense still lingers in your memory? What breach have you yet to convert into strength? And most dangerously, what current violation, if left unused, will fade into bitterness rather than triumph? Because the game does not end here. The breach has been exploited, the offender has been taught, but the true victory lies in what comes next, how you rise from the ashes of offense, not merely unscathed, but untouchable, and that is where our closing reflection begins. Power is not taken by force alone, it is taken by perception. And the greatest victories are won when others obey without ever realizing they are being guided. Control, hidden in plain sight, is the highest form of strategy. It demands patience, coldness, and an understanding of human nature so sharp that others mistake your influence for their own will. Ask yourself, how many around you believe they are free, yet walk the path you have chosen for them? How many cross your boundaries once and never again? And how many whisper respect for you, not out of affection, but out of quiet, calculated fear? This is the essence of true power, not in the strike, but in the silence before it. Now tell me, which of these lessons struck you the deepest? Which will you use first? Comment your thoughts. Subscribe for more strategies in the art of control. And share this with those who dare to think beyond morality into mastery.